President Joe Biden once again appeared to call on a pre-approved list of reporters after meeting with the press following the G20 summit in Rome. On Sunday, Biden discussed meeting with other world leaders in Rome to enact climate change initiatives. After his talk, he opened the floor to questions but admitted that he was told to start with the Associated Press. This pattern has been noticed by reporters since Biden's first formal press conference in January, where he seemed to call on a pre-selected list of journalists from the Associated Press, the Washington Post, NBC News, Reuters, and Bloomberg News.
Didn't recognize you with the mask on. I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. President. Here in Rome, you've tried to showcase that America is back, but back at home, your poll numbers have fallen. Your party's nominee for governor in Virginia is facing a very tougher than expected race. Your party spent months trying to negotiate the centerpiece of your domestic legislative agenda. So we're 1 year now since your election. And you have done a lot in your year in office to try to turn the page on the last administration, but we've seen how presidents can turn the page very quickly from one to the other. So why should the world, believe that when you say America's back, that really it's here to stay?
Because the way they reacted, you were here. They listened. Everyone sought me out. They wanted to know what our views were, and we helped lead what happened here. It's just very simple. You know, if you're honest, no, you are honest. That doesn't mean to imply you weren't, but that. We got significant support here, significant support. The United States of America is the most critical part of this entire agenda, and we did it. And by the way, look, the polls are going to go up and down and up and down. They were high early, then they got medium, then went back up, and now they're low. Well, look, look at every other president. The same thing has happened, but that's not why I ran. I didn't run to determine how well I'm going to do in the polls. I ran to make sure that I followed through on what I said I would do as President of the United States. And I said that I would make sure that we were in a position where we dealt with climate change, where we moved in a direction that was significantly improved the prospects of American workers being able to have good jobs and good pay. And further, that I would make sure that we dealt with the crisis that was caused by COVID. We've done all of those. We continue to do them, and we'll see what happens. But I'm not running because of the polls. Next question was from Jeff Mason, of Reuters.
Thank you, Mr. President. A question on climate and energy. Can the world and others be confident that you will be able to follow or make good on the promises on climate change that you have made when you're at Glasgow without a vote having taken place on your bill? And on the same topic, climate, some NGOs are already saying that the G20 commitments today were underwhelming. How do you respond to their criticism that the G20 response is not a good sign for COP26?
I'll answer both questions. Number one, I believe we will pass my Build Back Better plan, and I believe we will pass the infrastructure bill. Combined, they have $900 billion in climate resistance and dealing with climate and resilience, and it's the largest investment in the history of the world that's ever occurred, and it's going to pass, in my view. But we'll see. We'll see. You've all believed it wouldn't happen from the very beginning to the moment I announced it, and you always seem amazed when it's alive again. Well, you may turn out to be right. Maybe it won't work, but I believe we'll see by the end of next week at home that it's passed. With regard to and by the way, the infrastructure bill delivers an awful lot of things in terms of everything from tax credits for electric vehicles to making sure we are able to invest literally billions of dollars in everything from highways, roads, bridges, public transit, airports, etc. But we'll see. And with regard to the disappointment relates to the fact that Russia and including not only Russia but China basically didn't show up in terms of any commitments to deal with climate change. And there's a reason why people should be disappointed in that. I found it disappointing myself. But what we did do, we passed a number of things here to end the subsidization of coal. We made commitments here from across the board, all of us, in terms of what we're going to bring to the G26, and I think, you know, as that old trite saying goes, the proof of the pudding will be in the eating. I think you're going to see we've made significant progress, and more has to be done. But it's going to require us to continue to focus on what China's not doing, what Russia's not doing, and what Saudi Arabia is not doing.
One follow-up on energy, sir. You also met with energy consumers about supply. What steps are you considering taking if OPEC Plus does not raise supply? And do you see any irony in pushing them to increase oil production at the same time that you're going to COP26 to urge people to lower emissions?
Well, on the surface, it seems like an irony, but the truth of the matter is, you've all known, everyone knows, that the idea we're going to be able to move to renewable energy overnight and not have, from this moment on, not use oil or not use gas or not use hydrogen is just not rational. Certain things we can wipe out and we don't have to do. We should be moving immediately to get rid of, as they've adopted here, my proposal to end methane, to deal with a whole range of things. But it does on the surface seem inconsistent. But it's not at all inconsistent in that no one has anticipated that this year we'd be in a position, or even next year, that we're not going to use any more oil or gas, that we're not going to be engaged in any fossil fuels. We're going to stop subsidizing those fossil fuels. We're going to make significant changes. And it just makes the argument that we should move more rapidly to renewable energy, to wind and solar and other means of energy. But the idea that we're going to end and somehow, but it does on the surface, I admit to you, we're going to COP to deal with renewable energy, and I'm saying, why are you guys cutting off oil and raising the price just to make it look harder for us? But it's a legitimate question. I think, though, that if anybody thinks about it, no one ever thought that tomorrow, for example, it's going to take us between now and 2030 to have half the vehicles in America electric vehicles. So the idea we're not going to need gasoline for automobiles is just not realistic. But we will get to the point that by 2050 we have zero emissions. Jim Tankersley, New York Times.
Thank you so much. I'd like to actually start by following up on Jeff's question and then ask you about supply chains as a follow-up to that. But on the question of oil prices, economists say that, you know, when you raise the price of something, people will consume less of it. So why not allow even middle-class people around the world to pay more for gasoline in the hope that they would consume fewer fossil fuels and emit less?
Well, because they have to get to their work. They have to get in an automobile, turn on the key, get their kids to school. The school buses have to run. That's the reason why. You know that, Jim. That's the reason. The idea that there's an alternative to walk away from being able to get in your automobile is just not realistic. It's not going to happen. And this wasn't intended to happen. And by the way, when the cost of a gallon of gasoline gets to above $3.35 a gallon, it has profound impact on working class families just to get back and forth to work. So I don't see anything inconsistent with that, but I do think that the idea that Russia and Saudi Arabia and other major producers are not going to pump more oil so people can have gasoline to get to and from work, for example, is not right. But and what we're considering doing with that,
million Catholics back at home are seeing something play out that has never happened before. This split in the conservative wing of the Catholic Church moving to deny someone like you, a Catholic president, the sacrament of communion. For these Catholic back home, what did it mean for you to hear Pope Francis, in the wake of this, in the middle of this debate, call you a good Catholic? And did what he tell you, should that put this debate to rest?
Look, I'm not going to, a lot of this is just personal. Pope Francis has become I don't want to exaggerate it, he's become someone who's provided great solace for my family when my son died. He is, in my view, there's always been this debate in the Catholic Church, going back to Pope John the 23rd, that talk about how we reach out and embrace people with differences. If you notice what Well, what the Pope said when it was asked, when he first got elected Pope, he was traveling with the press, and they said, "What's your position on homosexuality?" I said, "Who am I to judge? This is a man who is of great empathy. He's a man who understands that part of his Christianity is to reach out and to forgive. So I just find my relationship with him one that I personally take great solace in. He is a really, truly, genuine, decent man. And I'll end by saying that, there were an awful lot of people who, and many of you, I'm not putting you in this position, I apologize, but many of you who are even in the press who went out of your way to express your empathy and sympathy when I lost the real part of my soul, when I lost my beau, my son. And my family will never forget, my extended family, because it was only a matter of days since my son had passed away. And Pope Francis came to the United States to visit with not only President Obama, but with the Catholic Church here. And I was asked if I would accompany him to Philadelphia, to the seminary, and anyway. And I did, but it was, the wounds were still raw of the loss of my son, and I had my extended family, and you're all tired to see my extended family. They're always around, my grandchildren, my children, my wife, my daughters-in-law. And before he left and got in the plane, the Pope asked whether or not he could meet with my family.